You know how you're trying to describe something to somebody and there's no real good way to do it? You're sort of at a loss for words or descriptors or even an explanation for the way things happened. Uh, I spent about 14 years like that. So after the wedding and the reception and all that stuff, we'd had I guess they called it a money tree. People gave us a bunch of money. We collected quite a bit of money at the wedding, almost $1,000 if I remember correctly. So we commenced waiting for my work permit to come through. So this was, mid-September. And of course, the first thing that we did, I wanted to do, and Hilda helped me do it, was I went around and met a lot of the people I really wanted to meet. One of them was incredibly important to me, was Eswood Davison, the man who played guitar for Winston Fitzgerald and all the records. And Hilda took me down to his place in River Bourgeois, and I met him and played with him and recorded it and met him and his wife Ray. And Eswood was one of my biggest heroes. He was a lefty. He was a left-handed guitar player, and he pretty well rebuilt the way guitar was used in Cape Breton fiddle. He was almost a jazz player, really, because Beattie Wallace, who played the piano for Winston on those records, most of them, she was a ragtime player, really, and so I started to. Hilda was really good about that. She made sure, she was very adamant that people, and me in particular, learned the history of the music, where it came from, how it was played, right down to tempos and settings and all these things. And she used to get after me a lot about playing too fast. And matter of fact, she was downright ugly about it sometimes, and it hurt my feelings, but it made me. I understood that because it was the same way that I was brought up playing music in the States. People didn't spare your feelings. If you did something wrong, they just told you, that sucks, buddy. You gotta do better than that. And that's sort of how she handled it. And so that was the beginning of the a developmental period in my playing where I really got addicted to fiddle music. And so we spent some time there. I met a young man named Robert DeVoe, who worked with Hilda in the Dinner Theater, and he became a lifelong friend and a beautiful man. His mom and dad, and he was just a great kid. He was a lot younger than me. I think he might have been 18 or 19 years old when I first met him, and a good fiddler, a man of history, a man of oral tradition. He knew a lot of old French songs. He played the fiddle very, very French. It was a very French style of everything he did. He was definitely a francophone, advocate, and a repository of Acadian history and lore, and a great guy. And so I started to meet these people. I met some of my family I had never met, my aunt and my cousins, and it was an interesting time. We were waiting and waiting for this visa to come in, and so we were just basically killing time there from September until I think it was it was a few months before it happened. There was one explosion. Hilda used to have explosions. She had a vicious temper, and you weren't quite sure exactly what might set her off, and again, she had her way about her because that's the way she was brought up, and that. But there was a massive explosion one day about a phone bill, and the bill that was run up, me and her planning the wedding and everything like that, and who should have paid for it, and who said who to what, and what to who, and it became a massive fight and an explosion, and just I think a lot blown way further out of proportion than it should have been, and it was the first time I saw that side of her, and I had after it was over, she went in the bedroom and I was sitting in the kitchen, and this was in Gilles' house. We were still staying with him, and I just sort of sat there and I thought to myself, I could just get in the goddamn car and leave. This would be annulled easily. We've only been married about a week, so I don't think it would be, and I sat there for a minute, I thought, Jesus, I don't know whether was a good idea, and but funny thing about me, I'm a loyal person, and I also I take a great deal of pride in following through with commitments and promises and things that if I set out to do something, I really don't like failing. Quitting cigarettes has been one of my banes because I've been trying to quit for 20 years, and I keep saying I'm going to do it, but I never quite get all the way. It's the only thing I really ever failed at, and that way, making that kind of commitment. And I wasn't going to walk away from this situation because things got a little weird off the bat, and it just became a matter of pride. Okay, well, and maybe I'm going to try to sort this out, and I'll do better. And in the beginning, I sort of considered myself the problem. I kind of took her word for it, and should have done that as long as I did. Anyhow, but that's another story. But we're gonna go into continue the timeline here, which was us sitting there in Gilles' house, and waiting for this work permit to come in the mail so I could re-enter the States. And I was calling Jerry every once in a while, and he seemed to be in high spirits, and they had gone and filmed this video. I think I mean Marty was involved in it for sure, but I think it may have had something to do with Sony Records. I think Sony was courting us at this point. Maybe, I don't know. I can't really remember. There was a lot of weird things going on there, and it was all over the place. So months went by, and Hilda and I just sort of floated around there and did what we could. I didn't bother. I don't think I actually went and worked or made any money at the time. It just wasn't the deal. And so we left there. We finally got the paperwork in January. And by the time that came in, Jerry was calling me and going, "You've got to get back down. You've got to get down. Get back." And I was like, "I can't come back until I get this paperwork." And so he started to get a little pissed at me. But I mean, it was I wasn't about to just cross into the States without that document. So finally, in January, it came, and we packed up the car. I don't remember if we had I don't think we took much with us, really. We took some things with us. We packed the car up and we drove down, right? So that was it. We got to Alabama. We got into the house. Hilda obviously wasn't prepared for Alabama, or the condition of the house. The house was a it was an old shack, right? It was not. Now, mind you, they were letting us live there for nothing. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, but it was not what she was used to. It was a culture shock, a massive culture shock. Stuff, walking around that could kill you if it bit you, and in insane heat. We didn't even have. We didn't even when she got there. We didn't even have a stove. And we were trying to find one and get it. And we had a fridge, but no stove. And so, anyhow, we land there, and it's pretty apparent that Hilda is water and oil with these people, and sort of rightfully so, because one thing about her is that she called bullshit on everything that she thought was bullshit. Now, sometimes she was wrong, right? Matter of fact, half the time she was probably wrong, but the other half of the time, she just nailed it on the head, and she looked at these people and saw, sort of the hypocrisy of them, and how weird everything was. And yeah, and she got really tired of the girls fast. Tammy and Stephanie, she didn't like them at all, and she didn't like any other women around me, so that was a problem. So she, like, all of this cult of personality came together in the space of a month when we got there, and just exploded in my face, because it was just doomed from the beginning. Another issue that came up right away was that Hilda needed to work, and Hilda couldn't work because she wasn't allowed to on the visa. And on top of that, moving there had taken away her identity. She wasn't a piano player anymore because there was nowhere to play the piano. We didn't have one there, even. There wasn't a piano anywhere. We didn't take one with us. She was obviously not going to get gigs. And I mean, I remember one time she actually, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think she actually flew home at some point to make a record with Jackie Dunn, who was a young lady fiddler from Antigonish, Nova Scotia, and she had gone home to do that and got paid and came back, and that made her feel better, and I could see where she was coming from, like if I had married somebody and went to whatever, Bolivia, and where nobody knew who I was or what I did, and I just stopped being who I was, I mean, that's pretty messed up, right? So, but I tried to keep my feet in Cape Breton with her, and tried to, play when we could. We'd get out of the church sometimes. There was an upright piano there, and we'd try to, play tunes there, and I tried to include her as much as I possibly could. And but that became a problem as well because of things like this story. So this gets so complicated so fast. First of all, Jerry believed that Wayland was going to keep working us. I don't know why he thought that, and I don't really think it was true. I don't really believe Wayland had any great scheme to keep this, to put Jerry and Tammy Sullivan wherever. he was just doing everything he could to help us. But I don't think it was a case of, yeah, I'm going to provide these people an income for the rest of their lives. But Jerry somehow in his heart thought that, or his head, that Waylon was going to call us again and get us to do something else. It was going to bring in a bunch of money and a bunch of contacts and networking and whatever. And so Jerry stopped taking work. And holy shit, I mean, that didn't make any sense. It was like, wait a second, okay, I just went up and got married. I'm back home here. I'm in Alabama. I'm here to work. You were bugging me for all of November to December, October, to come back because you had all this whatever. And now we're sitting here and you're sitting on your hands and not answering the phone because you believe Waylon is going to call us. So that became an instant problem, a major problem, because we had no money, nothing. And I started to see some, there was some other things that were going on, like I was still working for Joey. I was still, like Joey and all of the other Sullivans, Joey and Dave and Linda and all these people, they were all trying to help us still. The church was giving us money to live, to eat. And I started to look around to see how me and Hilda could make some money playing music. And so there was this one time I actually found this Highland Music Society in Mobile, and it seemed to be a pretty large organization. And so I got us hired there to do a workshop on Cape Breton fiddle. And so we go down, me and Hilda, and they had a piano in there for us, and we went in for, there was, I don't know how many people were there, but not many. But they were all fiddlers, about a dozen of them in this workshop, and they were part of a larger organization, of course. And so we're playing, and they're asking me questions, and I was answering them and doing whatever. And then I was sort of in the middle of explaining something about where I learned to play and stuff, and Hilda just piped up and said, he's not really a Cape Breton fiddler. He was born on the mainland, but and then as soon as it came out of her mouth, the whole room just kind of went silent, and looked at me, and she, I don't know if she realized what she'd done or what, but she tried to haul it back, haul the horns in a little there. But it just kind of it fell flat, and they paid us, and I could tell when we left there that we wouldn't be getting asked back there again, because we were hired. I was hired as an expert on the subject to go there, and I remember, driving back from Mobile and looking at Hilda and going, Jesus, you can't do that. And she's like, what? I said, you just completely cut my legs out from underneath me in front of these people who are paying us because they believe I know that I'm a Cape Breton fiddler, and obviously I am. I'm playing the music. Maybe I don't play it as slow as you'd like or whatever the case may be, but I'm still an expert in the field, been doing it all my life, and you just told them I didn't know what I was doing, that I'm not really who I sold myself as. And it was the only time all the time I knew her that she went, oh, Jesus, I'm sorry. I didn't even think. And that was the only time ever that she actually agreed with me and apologized and said, no, Jesus, I'm sorry. She said, that's not how I really meant it to come out. And so I let it go at that. And I thought, okay, well, fine, that's weird, but let's keep on going. And the problem was this would continue for years, but most of it would be done without me knowing is the problem. So anyhow, there's so many things in this part of my life that are tied directly to my marriage that there's really no way for me to skirt it. It is what it is, and just whatever. So by this time, So the next thing that happened is that all that stuff's going wrong. It's just not going well. Me and Hilda and Bob living in this house together, and we're fine together. We're great, but we got no money, and we can barely get groceries and barely get anything. And then we had this thing of we called it the day of the quarter pounder. So we were taking Hilda with us a lot of times when we were going out to work, which was really seldom. And to prove the point, this story is an example of this. We got on the bus, going to a gig, and Jerry, I didn't know how bad it was, but Jerry apparently was flat broke. So we stopped at a McDonald's for lunch, and we went into McDonald's, and I don't know how exactly what happened because I didn't witness this, but he didn't have enough money to feed all of us. So I guess I think I bought my own food, and Bob and Jerry were in there, and Jerry could only feed Tammy and Stephanie, I guess, is how it happened. He decided to not get anything to eat, and he decided for Bob that Bob wasn't going to get anything to eat either. Literally. And Hilda saw this, bless her heart, and went, fuck that. And she went and bought Bob a quarter pounder meal. And boy, oh boy, Jerry lost it. Hilda, I don't know what was said because I didn't see it, but Hilda came back on the bus and said, I don't know what the hell's wrong with him. He's crazy. He thinks he can tell me what I can do with my own money, and I can't buy a burger for my brother. Speaking about Bob, right? Her brother-in-law. But she considered him her brother in that situation. And Jerry got on the bus and was just fucking livid. He was like, I don't run this band that way. If we all can't eat, none of us eat, and blah, and all this fucking insanity. And he was pissed at Hilda and Bob for taking the food. Like, it was just, I just don't even know how to describe this bullshit. But it was the most neurotic thing I've ever seen in my life. And Hilda called it out. The way that's very good at doing that. She called it out and she said, I'm not letting Bob starve because you're a fucking idiot. And so, she bought the food. That moment, I think, was the beginning of the end. Because Jerry saw that he wasn't going to do whatever his bullshit thing was, because Hilda was going to catch him on it. And so it immediately became Jerry and Tammy and Stephanie in one camp and me and Hilda and Bob in the other. And they started trying to get rid of her. They didn't want her traveling with us anymore. It became an issue at every step, right? So the next thing that happened, which was, I think I have to take the blame for this one. Okay, we have to go back a step. Suddenly, there's a wedding date set for Stephanie and Griggs. And so it bothered me. It did. You can't help it, right? Here I was married myself, but I still was. It still bothered me. I wasn't sure what the hell happened there with between me and her in the first place, and he didn't have a pot to piss in, and apparently she dumped me because I didn't have one either. None of it made much sense to me, and there they're getting married. And I think I caused this problem because I'm pretty sure I bragged on Hilda to them at some point about her building her own wedding dress and that she was a great seamstress and blah blah blah. And so they went to Hilda, Stephanie and Tammy, and asked her to make their bridesmaids gowns. Like, I'm telling you, this is the most fucked up thing that's ever been, really. And so Hilda says yes. Hilda's like, yeah, get me the material, I'll build the dresses for you. So I don't know if they found her a sewing machine somewhere or if she had brought her own. I think she might have brought her own machine when we moved down. And so she goes to work, and she worked her ass off to build these bridesmaid dresses. So that's coming along, and all of a sudden it's would you guys play at the wedding? And so I couldn't say no because I couldn't let on that any of this was stinging me. So I said yes. And so not only did Hilda make all the dresses for the wedding party, except the wedding dress, of course. I don't know where Stephanie got her dress, but so we end up standing at the front of the church, Hilda playing the piano, and I played Here Comes the Fucking Bride, and played her down the aisle to Griggs. And it was really surreal. I remember that morning going into the church, and she was in there by herself in her dress. And to this day, it was one of those things. I looked at her in the wedding dress, and just it put cold chills all over me. It was not pleasant. It was just like, damn it. What the hell? How did this come about, right? I don't even know how we got here. So, anyhow, there it was. We played the wedding. We played them out of the church. And he sang his little song to her at the altar, and they got married and took off. So, that was messed up enough for a lifetime. And the next thing started to happen was the lawyer that had Linda Rose, who had helped me, get all this paperwork in order. I started to talk to Jerry and say, we got to get a better visa so that I can have landed immigrant status and Hilda can go to work. Because if we could do that, things would be a lot better. And so we went back to Linda, and Linda said, well, in order to do that, it costs about $5,000. And I was like, how the hell can we get $5,000? And Jerry said, well, why don't let's just put a collection jar at all the gigs, and people can put money in it, and you take the money and put it away. So we ended up putting this jar out at the merch table, and Jerry would sell it during the show, what few shows we were playing. But we started to collect a pretty good chunk of money. And sure enough, after a while, Hilda, again, right? she was pretty quick, on things for a lot of things that she said and did. She discovered there was money missing from this jar. She was keeping close count on it and collecting it, and she found a discrepancy in the accounting and figured that Tammy was, or Stephanie or whoever was dipping into this jar. And I believed her. And it was said, it was brought up. And of course Tammy denied it fully, wholeheartedly. And it just became, the entire situation became completely toxic, and less and less work. Things were falling apart in Tammy's life with, her marriage and everything to Tank fell apart. All these things started to happen, and then finally there was a big blow up one day when they finally found us a stove. This happened rather early on, actually, but they finally found us a stove and delivered it to the house, and I don't know what caused it, but Hilda got into a fight with Tammy. And it was a knockdown, drag out, because you're just not going to get over on Hilda. Sorry. You can do what you want, but I'd be terrified to go up against that woman in any kind of altercation. And she completely decimated Tammy in the yard, just called her everything but a white woman. And at the end of it, she said, and she started to say, fuck, but she stopped herself. Even Hilda was looking at these people thinking, I'm not going to swear in front of these people because they're so Christian, right? She stopped herself from saying, get the out of, and then she, get out of my Jesus yard, she says. And of course, Tammy's like, some Christian you are, yeah. And it was unbelievably bad. It was a massive, massive fight. And as soon as I saw that go down, I thought, well, that's the end of this. Because there's no way I can continue to work with these people, when obviously my wife and the lead singer for the band hate each other. And for that matter, there was some other things going on at this time that I started to find out that were really disturbing. I had written some songs with Jerry that got on the At the Feet of God album, and when the album came out, without my knowledge, Jerry had put his name on all these songs as a co-writer. And he wasn't. He wasn't even in the same place when I wrote them. He was home. I wrote them by myself. I took them to him, and he accepted them into the group and the album and whatnot. He took 50% of my songs. And so I called him one day. I said, hey, Jerry, I noticed that there was one tune in particular called And David Danced that I just loved. I loved it. It was a banjo tune that I frailed, and it had the tuners in it. I had the Keith tuners, and the second half of the tune I was, detuning in the middle with the Keith tuners while frailing, and I'd never seen anybody do that before, really. And I thought, this is really cool. This is an interesting tune. So, but he had taken half of it on the record and the publishing without telling me. So I called him up. I said, Jerry, why is your name on these songs? And Jerry said, well, we wrote them. I said, no, we didn't write shit. I wrote these songs and brought them to you. And he's like, well, I made the guitar part for it. I said, well, that has nothing to do with anything. How could you do this? And he's like, well, I just want to share everything. And I said, well, you can share whatever you want, but you can't share somebody else's material without asking them. And I got nowhere with it. He just wouldn't back down. He thought he was in the right, and it just wasn't going to back down. So that was another problem. That was another serious problem. I thought, you bastard. And I mean, just, it's bad enough that you're not even paying me, but now you're going to take half of any royalties that I'm even due to receive. So I had to find ways to make money, and it was very, very difficult. Joey was doing the best he could for me, but we ended up closing the other store in Demopolis because it was failing, and we kind of drew everything back into the original store in Jackson, the Book and Music Center, that his mother had owned, and we're still trying to do what we could, but then I started to find students that were willing to pay a lot of money. There was this one guy up country who wanted to learn to play the dobro, and he offered me $100 a week to go there, and he was the kind of a guy. He had a lot of money. He owned an excavating service, heavy equipment company, and he didn't really want to learn to play the dobro as much as he wanted me there in the house to tell stories and talk and laugh, and I was around famous people, and he wanted me there in the house, and he knew some of the people I had worked for in the past. Like, he was friends with the McCarter's father, and we called them one night, actually, and I would go there every Monday night, I think it was, and he'd pay me $100 bill to sit there and half-ass give him a dobro lesson that he wasn't really paying attention to. He just didn't give a shit. He just liked me. And God bless the man's heart. He's probably long gone now. He was an older man, but... So there were things like that. And also, by this time, Bob's car had bit the dust, and they found him another one that was worth about $300, an old green Ford Meteor or some big another land yacht car. And Bob was out doing odd jobs for this one and that one, trying to survive. But it was getting down to the point where the church was feeding us. There was no way for us to make a living off of what Jerry was doing, and the church was literally bringing us covered dishes. Brother Glenn would give us a few dollars here and there. It was a nightmare. It was a fucking nightmare. And Jerry wouldn't take any work. Nobody was getting along with each other. I wasn't getting along with Jerry. The girls hated Hilda. Bob was stuck in the middle, and all of these things, the collection jar, money going missing, I knew all that was true. It was a horrible scene. It was a horrible scene. So it finally got to June of that year, of 95. And I realized, here's what did it. I was in the house one day with Hilda, and she was going through some of my papers, and she saw some lyrics. She said, "What is this?" And I said, "It's just bullshit. I'm writing a few songs here and there." And she said, "Where's Gilgary's Glen?" I said, "It doesn't exist." I said, "It's just a composite place, I imagine, in Cape Breton." And she said, "Sing the song." And so I sang her this song I had written called Gilgary's Glen. And there was another one called The Island that I'd written. So I'd written them both pretty well on the same day. And so I sang this song for her, and she looked at me and goes, why are we here?" And I said, "Well, this is what I've been doing for 10 years. I'm trying to make it in this business in here, and this is where we have to start." She said, "You're nuts." She said, "You could make a fortune in Cape Breton singing songs like that. People would love you."
And I just didn't believe her. I said, no, I'm not. I can't do it. I've worked too long at all of this to just walk away. And but after a while, she wore me down, and for two reasons. Number one, she had faith in me then. I guess I don't know. I'm not sure what it was. But she did have some faith in me, and also she wanted to get the hell out of there because it was no way for her to live. She had absolutely nothing. She couldn't play music. She couldn't take a job anywhere. She couldn't, and she had to watch all this other bullshit going on. And so something in my mind, long about the first part of June that year, I thought, well, I guess we just can't do this anymore. It's not going to work. And Bob concurred. Bob was like, yeah, we can't keep this up. This is ridiculous. So long about that time, we had all got together, I think, somewhere on the road with Stephanie and Griggs, and there was a gig, I think, at a big church up there, and after the gig, we'd all gone out to eat somewhere, and I started to say my goodbyes, and I didn't tell anybody that I was saying goodbye, really. And Stephanie was the first one. We had eaten in this restaurant. She went out and sat in his truck alone. And I went out for a smoke, and I saw her sitting there, and I went over, and she had the window down, and I put my arm in the window. I said, well, I guess I'm not going to... I'm not sure if it was, common knowledge that I was starting to make a move away from there or what, but I don't know. I looked at her, I said, well, because she was now going to be living there in Nashville with him, and I said, I guess I'm not going to see you ever again. And I just looked at her and had my arm in the window. I'll never forget it. She drew up a little ball in the front seat there and started to cry. She said, don't say that. I said, well, what the hell do you expect? I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to always be here. You're married to another man. This will be the last time. And so I walked away from her, and it almost was the last time. It would take many years to before I ever did see her again. And I at the time though I figured I never would. So that was the first one, and then it came time that I was going to have to go talk to Jerry. So I did. I went to Jerry and I said, listen, buddy, we can't make this. And we just can't make it. This is not going to happen. I can't live like this. I got 3 people that I'm responsible, me and 2 others, and I'm trying to do what I can to survive, but we're not making enough money to do this, and I can't expect Hilda to sit here and do absolutely nothing, and Bob to sit here and do absolutely nothing when he's not driving the bus for you. And the road's at an end, and Jerry didn't take it well at all. Jerry, now the reason is that there was, I come to find out now that there was going to actually be an audition for Sony in Nashville. They had it planned up. It was a couple of weeks away. And Jerry said, you can't leave me, man. I'm trying to get a record deal here. And I said, well, what the hell? Why not? Why didn't you tell me this? Weeks ago. So I could have headed off all of this negative stuff that was going on. Because I could have said, just wait, because we're going to see about this deal. And he said, well, I didn't think you were going to leave. And I said, well, what do you expect, man? How do you expect me to survive like this? And he tried to talk me out of it, like, for a good 15 minutes. And I said, Jerry, I can't help you, buddy. I've got to take my wife home and my brother home. This is not going to work for us. And he looked at me and said, well, when are you leaving? I said, well, I don't know. I'll have to figure that out. And he said, well, I'd be leaving in the middle of the night if I was you. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, you might not get out of here in one piece if you're not careful. So there we go. The second time my life was threatened by these fucking assholes down there about leaving their bands, right? And I just thought to myself, well, you fat son of a bitch. Isn't that great? You're just the most Christian sumbitch I ever saw in my life. I went home, and we had found a dog on the side of the road, and we called her BB. And she was wandering around the house there. Hilda took to her really good, and that was sort of the only way she was staying sane. And I went home, and the next morning, the phone rang. Who is it? It's for you. It's Marty. So I took the phone. Hey, Marty, how you doing, buddy? So you're leaving Jug? And I said, yeah, I am. He said, well, you might not ought to do that. I said, why? He said, you can't, he said, you just can't. His exact words to me were, and I couldn't believe this, because I'd never heard the man swear. He said, you can't just say, fuck you, I'm leaving. He said, you can't do that. And I said, wait a second. I said, listen. I said, are you aware of what the conditions are here? And he said, I don't really care. I said, you should care, because if you want guys like me in that band, right? I mean, you can't expect us to live on $100 a month, which is about what we're trying to survive on here from him. He's just barely given me $75 a week, maybe sometimes. And Bob, and the church is feeding us, and I threw a laundry list of shit at Marty, and Marty was like, listen, man, you can't go right now. He said, we've got this Sony thing. He said, they need you. And I said, well, listen. I said, why is it that you can't find me something to do in Nashville when I'm not working with him? If you're that interested in this, if you have this much invested in it, get me some work. In his defense, I'd have to say, over the 2 or 3 years, he had gotten me a couple of good recording sessions, session gigs in Nashville, and that was fine, right? But I said, listen, find me something to do up there. That's where the money is. I'm a union musician. I'm allowed to work there, whatever. Get me something to do, and then this won't be an issue. I'll have enough money to work with Jerry, because I'm going to have to pay to work for him. And Marty was just like, I can't help you. He said, you don't work for me. You work for Jerry Sullivan. I'm not going to pay Jerry's band wages. And I said, well, I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to help me out. If you want me to stay in the band, do something for me. I've never let these people down. Now they're letting me down, and it just degenerated into not a good place until Marty just said to me, well, he said, if you leave this band now, you will never work in this fucking city again. And that's what he told me. I said, well, fine. I said, that's just great, because Jerry just got through threatening my life if I tried to leave, and now you're telling me that you're going to blacklist me in Nashville. He said, you can't do this to people. It gets around. He said, and if you leave them, you're done. And and that's the wrong thing to say to me. So I said, fine, good enough. I guess we're done. And I felt really bad about that. And I have for my whole life. I've run into Marty numerous times after that. And the man has held this against me for 30 years, over 25 years at least. And I wish he hadn't. I loved Marty. Marty was a great musician, and he's a great musician today. He's done tremendous work. The man's a legend. And I just wish something different would have happened. I don't know what could have happened, but something better than what did. And so that sort of cemented the deal. That was it. We were gone then. There's no way, even if I'd have changed my mind at that point, I couldn't have stayed, because, I just got threatened by two of the people I felt that were very close to me. And it sucked. It really sucked. And so I started to tell Jerry and Tammy. Stephanie was gone by this time now. Started to told Jerry and Tammy, well, we're going to leave in about a week. We're trying to get out of here in about a week's time. And so Bob and Hilda and I said, we had a talk, and I said, we're going to have to sneak out of here. We can't do this in broad daylight. And they agreed with me. And so it was actually kind of funny, because we had to clandestinely find a U-Haul trailer and get it there and load it without anybody seeing us. And Jerry's sister lived right across the road from us, right across the intersection of the dirt road. She was there watching stuff, So we had to hide this somehow, and we did. I don't even remember how we did it, but we rented a small U-Haul trailer. We managed to put it somewhere else while we were, waiting to leave. And I had told Jerry on a Saturday I was leaving in a week's time, and 2 days later on that Monday night, I'll never forget this, I went to teach that Dobro student, and that $100 was we couldn't have left without that $100. We just had enough money, I thought, to get out of there and get home. Paul Meharry stepped up and gave Bob the money for gas to drive home in his car. And Jerry, of course, called Bob and said, "So you're leaving too, are you?" And Bob said, "Well, of course I am." And Jerry's like, "You're taking that car then, are you?" And this is a man who hadn't paid Bob a fucking dime in 2 years for driving his bus, doing all the mechanic work on the bus. He rebuilt the engine of that bus for nothing. Like all this, Bob was indispensable to these people. He worked for them all the time. Barely got a dime of money in 2 years. And Jerry's like, "So you're going to take the car then, are you?" And Bob said, "Yeah, of course I am. I expect I'm going to get home." And so right then we also knew that it was like, we got to get out of here before somebody comes over here and takes the goddamn car, which they've clearly owed Bob the car. So it was only worth $200 or $300. So I went and taught that Dobro student, and I got that $100, and it was always a nighttime lesson. So we literally come back, made sure Ella was in bed, Jerry's sister, and we loaded. I never moved out of a house so fast in my life. Of course, I didn't have anything. But we loaded the entire U-Haul. We loaded Bob's car, put the dog in the car. Me and Hilda got in, and we got the hell out of there as fast as we could go. As a matter of fact, I think we actually took a bunch of back roads out of the county to get to the interstate and head north. And so that was the end of my time there. When I look back on it now, it's incredibly sad. You know, all of the good times I had there and the good people I met, and ended up running out of there like a criminal in the middle of the night with my employer threatening my life, and Marty, who was a hero and a friend to me, telling me, don't ever bother coming back to Nashville because you're done here. It was I look back on it, it's just, I don't know. It's a huge cauldron of regret, you know, mixed with anger and sadness, and just like, what the hell? 10 years of my life went down the tubes in the space of 4 months because I was being asked to do things that were just, how can you do anything when you haven't got enough money to eat? You know, like, I don't think I did anything wrong by leaving, but I think the ramifications of my leaving were, huge overkill with everybody involved. So there we were, Hilda and I and Bob. We caravanned up as far as where Bob was splitting with us and heading up 65 north, and Hilda and I were turning right and going east out on 40 to head to Nova Scotia. Bob's gonna head back to Ontario. And we said goodbye to Bob. We slept a little bit in the truck stop place, and then we headed up the road, going back to Cape Breton with a U-Haul and one original song that I was willing to sing, Gilgary's Glen. That's all we had to our names. We just barely had enough money to get there. Bob broke down on his way and had to get more money wired in from Paul Meharry to get to Kitchener, Ontario. But there we were. That was the trip. Me and Hilda and the dog and a U-Haul and one song. Heading back to Cape Breton. What a decade.
A man from the island of Skye, they say, came to the harsh land of this glen, with his hands in his heart and the sweat of his brow. He made the land good again. Through his children the seeds of the music were passed, and the secrets of tilling the land, and the ocean nearby held a kinship so deep, giving food up into their hands. And the folks in the cities have passed us by. They don't know how they got there and don't care why. There's a place we recall all the hardships back then, down here in Gilgary's Glen. Generations passed by and the coal companies came, and the younger men all moved away. Progress, they said, couldn't wait on the dead, and
and they wound up in early graves. Soon the highways were finished and the trestles stood high, as America took up the slack. And there's many a Scot down in old Boston town, wishing that he could only get back. And the folks in the cities have passed us by. They don't know how they got there and don't care why. But there's a place we recall all the hardships back then, down here in Gilgary's Glen. Nowadays life is simpler, the land now is still, and now and then a few tourists drop by, and they're charmed by the fiddlers whose tunes tell the tale of that man from the island of Skye. And the folks in the cities have passed us by. They don't know how they got there and don't care why. But there's a place we recall all the good times back then, down here in Gilgary's Glen. Yes, if life came by twice, we'd all do it again, down here in Gilgary's Glen.